to undergo. And folks who are experienced come in, have a look, and then make recommendations. And in addition to that, they'll identify areas for additional incentives that can be offered by the utilities or other players. So it's really interesting to see how many different auditing opportunities there are available across New York State. In addition to that, given the COVID-19 situation, previously those audits were done, when people would come into buildings, and as we know, some cases that's not available today. So each of the utilities are looking at how can they do that virtually? How can they still perform an audit and they don't actually have to come into the building, but maybe the building owner can walk them through the building and help identify things together. So that's a very exciting program that we're starting to see emerge. Obviously, there are a number of opportunities in the HVAC space, whether it's for heating or cooling. Sometimes, as Dennis talked about, that's a long-term capital replacement, something that where the equipment is reaching its end use, and so you're replacing an entirely existing piece of equipment with new equipment that's more efficient. So those sort of incentives exist, whether it's for your heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system or for other equipment. And you're probably all familiar with programs like Energy Star for more efficient equipment, such as cooking equipment. In addition, there are also custom programs that are offered by the utilities where you can bring something forward that maybe doesn't already have a program associated with it, but there's an opportunity there, and bring that forward, and the utilities will include custom incentive programs as well. The last comment I'd make is you'll see a word down here called direct install, and that's a really interesting thing. You're going to hear more about that in a little bit, where you have a bundle of energy efficiency measures that are brought together, and it's direct installed all at one time, which minimizes the disruption for the small commercial business and brings tremendous value. But you'll hear about this a little bit more. What I'd like to find out from the audience, and Spencer, if you could tee up the first polling question, is have you taken advantage of any of these utility programs before? Just a yes or no. It'll take 30 seconds. Okay, Spencer, what are our results? Okay, so 80% of the audience said no, they haven't taken advantage of a utility program, and 20% yes. So we're going to talk about that during the panel conversation. Spencer, if you could move us to the next slide. In addition to all the programs that are offered to the small commercial sector by the utilities, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy and Research Development Authority, also offers many programs. And, I was just amazed when I went through this to see how many different programs are available. It's almost overwhelming how many programs are available. Some of these programs are focused on solving very specific problems that small commercial businesses have, such as how do you find the funds up front to fund some of these programs that you want to implement. So you can see in here programs such as the lending programs that are available for small businesses and not-for-profit financing. These are either 0% interest or very, very low interest over a period of time. And sometimes these programs can also be done on your energy bill itself. You see some other programs in here around getting somebody to help, because a small business really doesn't have time, or can you expect them to understand HVAC systems? And so having somebody who can come in who's a pro, somebody who's an expert like a Dennis can come in and take a look at these systems and make some recommendations on how to move forward. The Flexible Technical Assistance Program, for example, provides expert technical resources who can come in, take a look, and make a recommendation in a particular area. Jody talked about upskilling and workforce development. a lot of places are closed right now. I was talking to the Hudson Valley Community College folks earlier today, and they're not able to offer hands-on training right now at the same level of scale. So that kind of workforce development, how do we develop new programs, new jobs? A lot of the growth from HVAC energy efficiency is going to come from new areas, and we need to train our workforce. We need to provide certificate programs. So NYSERDA is offering a number of programs in the small commercial sector to grow this. Spencer, let's move to the next polling question now. So similar to with the New York State utilities, how many of these, are you aware of these programs? Have you taken advantage of any of the NYSERDA programs before? Take 30 seconds. Okay, Spencer, what are the results? See if they're similar to the utility results. Okay, so it's a little more take up on the NYSERDA programs, but still the vast majority of people have not taken aware of a NYSERDA program. Next slide. So, that's right, we have another polling question actually now. So this is really to say, if you haven't taken advantage of one of those programs from either the New York State utilities or NYSERDA, what do you see as the single largest barrier for participation in this program? And I'll apologize in advance because we had a longer list of answers here. So there may be, your answer may not be here, but we learned that the platform limits our options on answers to just 5. So pick the one that fits best for you. But I apologize if your answer isn't here. Okay, Spencer, what do we have for answers? Okay, 50% is lack of awareness. Wow, that's a huge number. Followed by time and money constraints, and then some trust issues. So this is great feedback for our panel, and we're going to get to them in just a moment. One more slide I wanted to share. Recently, NYSERDA completed a commercial baselining project over the last several years and published their results. And I thought this was really interesting to see what are they seeing as the trends in New York State. And you can see here VRF, HVAC controls, and recommending higher efficiency technology appliances is what came out of that. And you can see on the right-hand side what are some of the penetration for HVAC controls. And while we've seen growth in areas like programmable thermostats, there's still a big opportunity. And so what I'd like to do now is bring up the panel. So Spencer, if you can invite our 3 panelists to join us. Oh, I see we have another polling question, but let's bring them up while we're asking the polling questions and invite them in. So before I introduce the panel, get them all engaged in this, let's ask this 4th and final polling question. And this is related to the creation of HVAC jobs. Pre-COVID, because we don't have a post-COVID survey at this point, what was the expected growth rate for HVAC jobs? Again, take 30 seconds. Okay, Spencer, what do we have for answers? Okay, interesting. It's pretty evenly distributed across here. It turns out that the answer is actually 15%. And that was pre-COVID. It'll be interesting to see post-COVID. I actually think that the job growth is going to be even greater. I know when I talk to everyone who's in a vocational technical high school, I was talking to the Medford and South Shore vocational technical high schools earlier this week, as well as the community colleges. They don't have any extra HVAC resources, people on the side waiting for jobs. Everybody's gainfully employed. And so we're going to need to grow the job market. And that's a great backdrop for the conversation we're going to have with our panel right now. So I'd like to introduce all three panelists briefly. And I guess from left to right, Mayra Lujan is with NYSERDA. She is an outreach manager. This was really interesting to me because I was not aware that NYSERDA actually had job titles called outreach managers, and I just think that's fantastic. And that just shows you that NYSERDA is trying to drive awareness of their program. So Mayra, it's great to have you with us this morning or this afternoon. To her right, Dan Keating. Dan is with National Grid, has an illustrious career there, and responsible for sales and technical sales and support across New York State. Dan, thanks for joining us today. Fantastic to have you. And to the right, Ron Slosberg, who is the Vice President with LMS Energy, and Ron drives a lot of programs for both NYSERDA and National Grid, and we'll talk from his personal experience in 20 years in doing energy audits and other energy efficiency programs. So I'd like to just thank all three of the panelists for joining us this afternoon. And so we're going to kick it off with questions to each of the panelists. I'm going to ask a single question and then ask each of the panelists to, from their perspective, comment on that. So the first question for the panel is, which programs are successful for the small commercial sector and why? And I'd like each of you to comment on that. Maybe, Mayra, let's start with you.
Sure, so glad to be here. Thank you for organizing this, Joe, and for including NYSERDA in these kind of panels. I do outreach, and I've been doing that for about 5 years for the commercial programs. So I'll be speaking mostly from that perspective on this panel. And NYSERDA has, as you were mentioning, a wealth of programs that we have put out in the market for many years. I think one of the ones that I'd love to highlight, partly because you just mentioned them, are the direct install programs that are out there, not only from NYSERDA, but all of the utilities throughout New York State. These install programs do typically an energy audit and then immediately give you the cost of all of the upgrades that you could have, taking into account incentives from the utilities to install all of those pieces of equipment. So they're really interesting. I think they're extremely successful in terms of the volume of upgrades that they do. And I think at this point, they also have a great operating model where they really make it easy for the vendors and really easy for the customers to be able to participate. Those programs in the 5 boroughs near New York City employ a couple hundred people and really go through a lot of different businesses in all of these areas. We have 2 programs that I'd like to highlight that I think are going to be very interesting to small businesses. This is a new program that we recently announced. It's a statewide clean heat pump program, and that is a $450 million incentive program to deploy heat pumps throughout 2025. Now, this pool of funds is mostly going to go through the utility companies, but it's a huge pool of funds that will be very interesting for the private sector to capitalize on. And our 3 commercial programs, I think, have been over the years very effective. Those are the flexible technical systems that you already introduced, Joseph. This really helps us prove the hypothesis of what really could help customers and vendors push the line towards decisions that will drive energy efficiency and sustainability, is having the right information at the right time. So being able to get that information when it's convenient to make a decision and when it makes sense to be able to plan for capital improvements or just be able to plan to design a space differently, whether you're a small commercial or a larger commercial. ASHRAE also recently partnered with the Flexible Technical Assistance Program to pilot some research on 20 buildings that will look at COVID response measures and the interplay with energy efficiency. Another program that I think has been super interesting and will have a lot of potential for helping the market in the future is a real-time energy management program. This one really hits the issue at data availability, and it is a program that has funded around 800 sites across New York State and allows landlords mostly to collect data and use it to make ongoing decisions in terms of operations and really adjust their building operations. This program provides an upfront cost for installing equipment, software, and hardware needed to really do real-time energy management, so ongoing commissioning. It offers training for facility managers as well. And the last program that I love to talk about is the commercial tenant program. It's the one that I focused on the most. We provide incentives for the experts, the energy experts, who are the ones that we really trust will be able to advise tenants and landlords on decision making. We provide incentives for them to be able to cover their professional fees when advising. So doing audits, doing benchmarking for tenants, helping them design their space better, and even helping them look at their operations, maybe put together their maintenance plans and preventive maintenance plans. This program has been widely successful. It now has expanded to all types of tenants. So we cover small, medium, and large in all sectors of the industry. And it still has a couple $1 million left in funding. There is a program that I think Ron will be able to speak about, the Green Jobs, Green New York energy studies, that also looks at facilitating the information at the right time.
Thanks, Mayra. That's fantastic. I mean, those are incredible programs, and from what you're saying, you know, there's still quite a bit of funding available for people to take advantage of. That's great.
Yes, each of these initiatives has many millions of dollars and ongoing participation. We can always talk to vendors if you're interested in understanding and qualifying for them, and customers as well.
I think there's a perception in the market that due to COVID and other situations that this sort of funding is not available. So I think that's another part of that outreach that has to let people know that the funding is there, it's set aside, and it's not been reallocated to something else. So I think that's an important part of the awareness. Hey, Dan, would love to hear your perspective from the utilities.
Yeah, absolutely. I won't steal too much of the thunder of Green Jobs, Green New York, or Flex Tech from Ron, but there's definitely a great transition from NYSERDA programs over to utility programs, and hopefully we can help out with that lack of awareness and that lack of trust that we saw from that earlier portion. So as far as success in the small commercial sector, there's been a lot of success with our small business service program. Currently, it's just with electric measures. We're looking at implementing gas in 2021. But what I really like about this program, it typically covers about 60% of the project cost. And right now, through 2020, we've bumped that up due to COVID, and we're covering 85% of the project cost. So average is about 18 cents per kilowatt hour saved. Now we're at 25 cents per kilowatt hour saved through the middle of December. We can do any electric measures, but currently 90% of those measures are lighting. The next largest is refrigeration. So of course, we'd like to see more HVAC measures being implemented in that program. Another beauty behind that program is there's a 10% lump sum discount if you pay for the implementation up front, or you can put it on your bill over 12-month period. So that small business program, you know, kind of our direct install program has been very successful. We implemented an e-commerce website, so you can buy Wi-Fi thermostats, there's pre-rinse spray valves, pipe installations, so different things on the e-commerce website. We can provide that link to folks. Our midstream program has been pretty successful. I mean, currently it's right now just lighting. The next step is for unitary HVAC equipment. But that incentive is as soon as you buy that piece of equipment right at the distributor, that discount, that incentive is taken off right as soon as you buy it. So the midstream program has been very successful this year when we piloted it just for lighting. And then there's our custom program. So small business, you know, depending on how you define that, we define it maybe differently than others. You might fall into that small business solutions market. You might fall into our large C&I market. We have great custom programs. That's what my team looks at. Any different technology, how it saves energy, what type of incentives we can give it. That right now we have a 0% financing for 24 to 36 months. That's good through the end of the year, and then we're going to look to reinvigorate that 0% financing through till next year. But in a nutshell, the Small Business Solutions Program with our customer direct option has been the most successful in the small business, small commercial sector. Thanks, Joe. Over to you, Ron.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Mayra. Thanks, Joe. So small businesses are a unique sector in the marketplace. They are often overlooked by many energy efficiency consultants and, quite honestly, many equipment vendors. The opportunity, the financial opportunity at any one particular small business is typically small. It's a small entity. In addition to that, the small business is owned and operated by the business person that is focusing on whatever their main core business is: sales, some manufacturing, a dentist's office, a doctor's office, a restaurant, a shoe store. Right? They don't have an energy manager. They don't have a background in energy technologies. They're not aware of this information or the programs that are available to them. So they're unique sector, they're overlooked, and they behave differently than large commercial industrial. So the programs that are most successful are those that are going to provide information, objective, non-biased information to a customer, and then help them towards implementation. So whether it's with the utilities, small business audit program or energy study program, or the NYSERDA Green Jobs, Green New York program. And the Green Jobs, Green New York program, through the end of the year, at least through the end of the year, is offered at no cost to the business. The individuals that go to the small business sites are not selling services or not selling equipment. So it's completely unbiased and objective. It's the provision of information. It's the assessment of energy efficiency opportunities, providing estimates of implementation cost, estimates of payback, estimates of energy savings, and then taking them the next step and helping them move into the energy efficiency programs, the incentive programs, the rebate programs that are offered in New York State to help them implement. So the most successful programs, to roundabout to answer your question, Joe, the most successful programs are those that are going to start by providing well-rounded and unbiased information to the small business, and then help move them towards implementation and hand them off, a successful handoff to an implementation contractor.
Thanks, Ron, and Dan. Just really great insight for the small commercial sector, business owners, project expediters, HVAC contractors. And on that note, Spence, if you could advance us to the next question, I think let's talk about job creation. The HVAC industry, historically, I think a lot of folks were just installing new equipment or maybe fixing things when there was a big problem. HVAC energy efficiency. What's your point of view on job creation? Is this going to be a big opportunity, a small opportunity? Where do you see this going? And maybe this time we'll switch it up and go from right to left. So Ron, you go first, and then Dan, and then Mayra.
So in a normal business as usual environment, energy efficiency can help create jobs because it frees up capital. Small businesses typically operate on very tight margins, right? And somewhat unsophisticated financial models because it's a small business. So any available capital that the owner has can be used to reinvigorate their business, to expand space, expand staff, sales, whatnot, all of this creating jobs. Now we move to the situation that we have today with COVID. And energy efficiency is even more critical because it the businesses are operating on negative margins now, with sales are typically going to be down, business operations are going to be significantly impacted. So energy efficiency is critical to try and free up some capital. The issue, of course, is, you know, how do you get there? How do you get, which I think we'll deal with in your next question, Joe, but how do we get to implementing energy efficiency in these facilities? Thanks.
Let me go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I'm just going to follow Ron's suit because it's a good question. Pre-COVID, post-COVID, just like the picture you had of me early on, which was pre-COVID, and now you have, you know, the beard I've been growing since March here. So, you know, during COVID, right, you're seeing controls contractors busy tweaking controls, outside air intake, Jody brought up earlier today. HVAC contractors looking at COVID mitigation strategies. I think you'll hear a little bit about that a little later with HEPA filtration, bipolar ionization, ultraviolet germicidal radiation. So you're seeing them busy during these times, but there's that catch-22 with small businesses potentially closing, right? You know, gyms, restaurants, you know, kind of struggling through these times. So it's tough to really, you know, figure out the creation of jobs during this time period. But we saw earlier, right, that I think it was over 15% or 25%, I forget that statistic, but without a doubt, you take COVID out of the mix, there's a creation of jobs. At a high level, and Ron touched upon this a little, you know, National Grid, other utilities have goals to support energy efficiency. New York State has goals for our customers. Our customers have goals, end users have their goals to be sustainable, to promote energy efficiency. So, and right now we're hiring, you know, I'm hiring 2 people downstate New York to support these goals. So I do feel that HVAC does create jobs. We talked a little bit about clean heat initiatives, so where we're electrifying the heat. You know, this is going to be, again, a little catch-22. I spoke to a contractor the other day after a building owners and managers association presentation. This contractor is in the boiler business. So with the New York State policies in place that Jody spoke about earlier, this contractor is looking forward and looking how to electrify the boiler room. So not only are they looking forward and seeing how they can be sustainable, and even we might even, instead of creating, it might be just retaining jobs. But I do feel you're going to see contractors shifting on how they can retain, but also that those new knowledge, skills, and abilities we're going to need with, you know, the clean heat initiatives throughout New York State. So in a nutshell, you know, we're pushing hard on the HVAC side of things as far as, you know, creation of jobs, and I'm very hopeful for that. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Mayra?
Yeah, and then again, from the perspective of the New York agency that I'm representing, we are a stronghold on championing the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, the CLCPA, which is Governor Cuomo's plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 85% by 2050. In addition to that, we also have now the Build Back Better initiative from NYSERDA. So this is a post-COVID additional source of funding that New York State has added. So there's definitely, we at least have a lot of funding and a lot of new programs that are starting to get pumped out to keep on pushing on energy efficiency. Just like Ron was saying, now it's even more critical. And it's also a period of great opportunity in terms of rethinking how we're going to take all these changes from the changing environment and pushing them into energy efficiency, and rethinking how we operate and how we design spaces. We, as an agency, are lucky that we've seen 0 changes in terms of diminishing work, diminishing applications for incentives from New York State in general. And instead, we've seen even more funding from the state. So it all seems that the mandate is going to keep on, is just to keep on pushing energy efficiency and keep on really empowering the energy experts, just like Ron was saying, that can really provide that kind of advice and that can reach out their customers and educate them and show them the path forward in terms of energy efficiency. We definitely have seen that that's the most effective way to reach all of the small businesses. We've tried many different marketing ideas and other outreach initiatives, and really concluded that the best thing we can do is train the trainers. So train the consultants that can walk the streets, that really know their industry and that really know their clients and know how to reach them. I have some interesting numbers here just to share. There is NYSERDA issued a New York Clean Energy Industry Report in 2019, and some of the highlights are that nearly 159,000 New Yorkers were working on clean energy industry across the state. And that is more workers than the biotech and the agriculture industries together. Over 80% of employers who were hiring clean energy workers in the past had difficulty hiring, mostly because of lacking talent and training and technical skills in the workforce. So other initiatives that NYSERDA is launching are initiatives to train over 1,000 workers to install green building technologies and combat climate change. These were announced in September 2020. They are called Career Pathway Training Partnerships, and will be targeting training for 1,000 workers and prioritizing the state's most underserved populations, including low-income New Yorkers and those residing in environmental justice communities. So that's another focus that we're starting to see in NYSERDA. It's a general shift from the Class A buildings, the very large commercial owners and tenants that really know their incentives and really know their programs and how to make the most out of them, and focus our funds and our resources, as well as our staff, into reaching out those communities that will need it most.
That's fantastic. Obviously, as you were saying, underserved, I was also thinking about, you know, we just passed Veterans Day and the programs that are out there to help veterans in this industry as well. So, you know, there's just a tremendous amount of opportunity across the board. So let's move to our third question. Thank you to all the panelists. So the third question is, what holds back HVAC energy efficiency and what can we do differently? So this time I'll switch it up again. We'll start with Dan, we'll go to Mayra, and then we'll go to Ron.
Thanks, Joe. So how much time do we have to speak about this? So I got just two quick, you know, what holds us back, and two quick, what can be done differently. So what holds us back? So, you know, on the gas side of our business, you know, nothing's holding us back. We do a ton with pipe insulation, steam traps, steam vacuum pumps, condensing boilers, steam hot water boilers, and where our folks struggle to implement or help get these implemented with our incentives is we're competing with the other measures, the electric measures that are non-HVAC, like lighting. So on the electric side of our house, and it's even true today, 80% of our projects we incentivize are lighting. And, you know, there's quick paybacks, there's great incentive. So that actually holds back HVAC, and we talk about it internally all the time. How can we get our folks, how can we focus more on HVAC and shift that focus? Then we also struggle with what we call our benefit cost analysis. So as a regulated utility, we abide by guidelines set forth through New York State. We utilize the New York State Tech Manual. A lot of times we struggle to get an expensive piece of equipment like a comfort cooling chiller or a rooftop unit to pass what we call, and I won't get too technical on folks, but this benefit cost analysis that we have to go through. So as far as what can be done differently, you know, I did recently have the opportunity to respond to our Public Service Commission staff about this, and hope we can have some flexibility in the future to have some flexibility with that benefit cost analysis. The nice thing is, like currently, we can do some comprehensive analysis if we bundle HVAC with lighting or with some other measures that have a quick payback and some good incentives. We can get some of these HVAC measures that typically aren't moving forward our benefit cost analysis to get that to move forward. So that I think could be done differently, just to get that BCA. It's more of a policy thing that we need to work on to get more of these HVAC measures out into the market. there's a shift now. Instead of just looking at annual savings, we're now going to be looking at lifetime savings of a measure. So this is perfect for HVAC measures like a big chiller or rooftop unit that have a longer lifespan than some of the other measures that we incentivize. So with that longer lifetime savings, I think there's going to be an added focus on these technologies in New York State, as we shift from annual savings to lifetime savings, and that'll get more focus on the HVAC. And then midstream. I talked about that midstream program being successful with lighting. If we can get this midstream program with HVAC up and running, I feel that can really help move the HVAC industry forward. Right now, a lot of times we're seeing in stock a kind of that baseline piece of equipment. So when a customer has a breakdown, an emergency, and they need to put in a new unit, they're buying that least efficient, what's in stock type of unit. So if we can incentivize that more efficient piece of equipment, and therefore the HVAC manufacturers, distributors will stock that item, and we can buy that piece of equipment down with our incentive. So now it's more in line with that least efficient, lesser expensive model. They might be more inclined to buy that more efficient unit and get that incentive direct as soon as they buy it right from the distributor. Thank you. Over to you, Mayra.
I think it's Ron, or is it me?
Ron.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mayra.
I'll jump in. So I think that's a really interesting point that you're making, Daniel. Thinking about how we present the benefits of some of these ECMs and some of these investments that small businesses can take. Something that we have learned in the past few years too, while working with tenants, is instead of showing them annual savings when doing an ECM, let's look at the lease length. So however many years they're going to be in that space, and show them how much they'll actually save in the entire time. And some of the leases in office spaces can be 20 years long. So we're looking at like much bigger magnitude of scale, and it really drives a different decision. So one thing that we are looking at is, again, understanding how to present the information, the right information at the right time. So how do we really, how can we present it so that it's effective and so that it really compares the different options that somebody has. We also like to look at incremental cost and incremental savings from a baseline. So if you are just going to meet the energy code, that's great, this is where you would be. But if you wanted to go just a little bit more, what really is that cost? And what kind of benefit will that bring you? And what we have seen is just a much larger rate of implementation in the programs that have been using this kind of information presenting methodology, I guess. Another thing that I think is holding us back, and I hope, again, we're in a transition period that allows for a lot of opportunity, is a split incentive between a tenant and a landlord. So just the idea of, I don't really own this space, why would I invest in it? Sometimes metering issues, it's not clear who's going to receive the benefits, so the savings, and who will have to pay for this. So we are trying to put a lot more effort into thinking about how can we change the leasing, or how can we at least start a conversation between landlords and tenants to start talking about benefits and sharing the benefits. And with Local Law 97, which is a local law that will be starting in a couple of years and will be offering fines for spaces that based on their carbon emissions, we are starting to see a lot more dialogue, at least, right? So starting to think, will I pay for those fines? Will my tenant pay for those fines? And if that's the case, how do I meter? If I want them to pay, I need to measure that, and I need to report that. So information flow, I think, has been holding us back. But in the future, we see a lot more metering coming and a lot more transparency and dialogue on that end. And last thing I'd like to say about that changing environment, we definitely see a lot of just dialogue, thinking about just increasing ventilation rates as a COVID measure. And it really would be a pity if we don't look carefully at those ventilation rates and learn how to dial them up when the space is very occupied, and how to dial them down when there's not that many people in the space. There's also, we're hearing a lot more tenants and a lot more small businesses thinking about ventilation, and it's something that we hadn't necessarily heard, so it's now in the radar, which really gives us an opportunity to start looking at data and sharing it with them, and maybe giving a good twist in terms of energy efficiency and sustainability.
Awesome. Rob?
Yeah, the tough thing with going last is that you really just want to say ditto to Mayra and Dan, and it's been said. And I support and agree 100% with what's been said. I think, from the small businesses that we deal with, the awareness, the information, the question about what do I do, how do I do it, right? If you get that answered, and then the financial hurdle, right? The most important thing now is the financial hurdle. Where do they get the money to do this implementation? So Dan talked about some of the financing that National Grid has, whether it's PACE financing or other types of financing, but getting the money, making it smooth and easy is critical. And I really like the discussion about life cycle and life savings and showing that annual pro forma. The challenge with that is, right, business owners are used to thinking of simple payback, and getting that mindset to look at life savings. I think it's a great opportunity that we could all adopt in our work to really try and illustrate to an owner. This is not just, okay, 3-year payback, but let's really look at it. If this piece of equipment is a 15-year life, let's look at that. And how long are you going to be in your facility, and how long do you plan on being in business? And these are savings that go for 15 years. So what holds back energy efficiency? Obviously, information, we've talked about that. And then the finances and the availability of capital, we've talked about that.
Thanks. I was, as you were all talking about your perspectives, I was thinking back to what Jody told us at the outset of this about, a different way of measuring the benefit side of this, and could we value workforce productivity, and the value that creates for all of us is 30 to 50 times any of these other benefits. So if we only found a proper way to value that, it would make all the rest of this kind of a lot easier, or at least it sounds like it would make it easier. Spencer, do we have any questions from the audience at this point?
Let's open it up to anybody who would like to ask questions. Please go into the questions icon and to ask the questions. But if you have any for right now, Joe, go ahead.
Well, I see one question, and this question is being posed to Mayra, but probably others could answer it as well. Since the dollars for local law 97 won't be available for a while, will NYSERDA consider offering dollars for projects that are started sooner?
Yes, absolutely. So we are currently offering them through all of the different programs that I mentioned, and I can also give you, Joe, a list with links to other programs. Okay. But any kind of study that you currently are interested in doing to understand where you stand in terms of local law 97, so you're benchmarking, and then do a road plan of what you will need to do, and maybe how far you can get if you do want certain kinds of improvements versus others, will definitely be paid for as part of the technical assistance. So we consider that consulting value that our energy experts can provide. So any kind of project, whether it's local law 97 or any of the other local laws, really, that will help you make a decision or understand where you are, NYSERDA is offering incentives for right now. And feel free to contact me. I can always put you in touch with the right person at NYSERDA.
Dan, from National
And
Grid's perspective?
yeah, just to add that to that, because we did get clarification on these stretch codes. So any municipality you're working with that may have these stretch codes, and I forget, I forgot if you said local law 87 or 97, but for 87, I think it was that's the code one. But as far as, so we, and Mayra talked about it a little before about that incremental savings. So we look at New York State code and want you to go above and beyond New York State code. So that would be our baseline, and that we would incentivize that product or whatever, you know, you're implementing in that facility to incentivize that particular energy conservation measure.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I would like to thank the panelists for all of your great input. You know, it's very obvious that there are just a tremendous number of programs that are available in the small commercial sector, number one, if you can't find a program and you need some specific support, you know, that both NYSERDA and the utilities are flexible. They're there to help. They want to help your business in whatever way that they can. And yeah, the opportunities to improve are tremendous. And for the audience that's here, you know, the job creation potential is enormous. You know, there's tremendous opportunity. And if I know some people who participate in this industry, maybe they came from a different part of the industry. Maybe they were in the renewables industry, and due to COVID, that slowed down a little bit, or LED lighting slowed down. You know, there's a lot of funds available for retraining your workforce and pivoting into those new areas. So, you know, I think my parents always said, you know, when faced with adversity, that's an opportunity. Turn it around and create that opportunity. And I think the people that are on this call, whether they're from the utility or from NYSERDA or from the industry, are here to help. So let's think of this as an opportunity and grow our industry. Again, thank you for the panelists. We're going to take a short break and start the next session at the top of the hour. Spencer, if you want to put that slide up, the next session will start at 1 o'clock, and this is going to be on healthy buildings and energy efficiency, the critical role of HVAC maintenance. And Bob Carl is going to be our facilitator, who's the publisher of Healthy Buildings. So come back and join us at 1 o'clock. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.